Welcome to our new adventure here, the recording, showing how to do explainer videos where you take a basic concept and you're trying to explain it. So there's several skills I want you to work on here. One is like thinking logically about how you're going to present something. Um, and two, practicing your public speaking skills, speaking slowly and distinctly with enough volume. And then three, getting some practice with a screen recording software. We're going to use Loom, which is freely available. And as a student, you get a nice um, package with it for free. And so what I'm going to do is kind of demonstrate what I want you to do with your project. So first off, I'm going to talk about getting Loom set up. So one suggestion would be when you start recording to not worry about if at the beginning it's a little messed up or you have to kind of futz with some things, because you can always easily trim off that beginning. So if you're not quite set at the beginning, that's okay. But I'm going to just give you a few technical pointers with Loom here. So one thing you want to try to do, like if you're in Windows and you've got different applications set up, you want to get it so you can switch between the two things that you're going to want to show your user. So right now I'm obviously showing you a PowerPoint slide, and I can advance in that and Loom will record that. But I can also switch over here to my Excel screen and show you this kind of stuff. Now you'll notice, you'll notice that I can go back and forth in Windows by using the Alt-Tab key. In Mac, I'm not sure what that is, but I'm sure there's a key that you can switch from one window to another window. But in Windows, if you've established the pattern where I'm opening this window and then I'm opening this window, when I do the Alt Tab, it'll just go back and forth between those two. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is kind of mimic for you a lecture on Excel and just teaching you two little things. Before I get into that, I just want to call your attention to some presentation tips that I want you to think about as you're doing it. So, and this slide deck you have available where all the other slide decks are. Okay, so to start with, as with any kind of speaking or writing or communication thing, you want to make sure that you understand your user. So some things that fall under that would be giving a framework up front about what you're going to teach, direct their attention at the things that they need to attend to as you're teaching, give them certain road signs like, okay, there's 2 points I'm going to cover, there's 3 points I'm going to cover, so they can anticipate what's coming. All those things reduce the cognitive load. In other words, it gives you less you have to think about, so it's easier for your audience to keep up. So one just simple example is if I say, okay, there's 5 points about this, that person taking notes or trying to understand can mentally say, okay, I got 5 things coming. I need to check and make sure I got 5 things. That's a lot better than saying, okay, I'm going to tell you some stuff. And then you're like, I don't know, how many boxes, what's coming? So if you give them a framework to work with, that's usually useful. Okay, another key component here with giving a good presentation is you want to think about breaking it down into discrete elements and as much as possible simplifying. So lots of times what I'll do is I'll kind of work up what I'm going to talk about. Then I think if there's any details I can pull out that they really don't need to know about, so you can have a clear focus. As you're going along, directing people's attention to what they need to see can be really useful. You can do that in an automated fancy fashion with automation, or you can also just point to things with your mouse or your cursor. If you're in person, you can gesture to things, but directing people's attention is really helpful. The multiple representations here, you want to make sure that you're giving people different ways to think about things. So, and you'll see here an example. I'm going to give you a static representation of something, and then we'll do a little video demonstration of it, or like a live action. If you can anticipate problems, kind of think about where they're going to get confused, what detail might elude them, and give that a little extra attention. Removing any distractions, things that are going to get in the way. And then, like I said before, using frameworks like there's 3 steps, and then the number of steps, or kind of help giving your user a model of what's going to come at them. Okay, so I'm going to try to do this for you now and just kind of show you the kind of presentation I want you to create. Okay, so go back to the beginning. First off, you want to give them some kind of billboard or something that kind of tells them, okay, here's what's coming in this little lecture. So what I'm going to do is say, I'm going to talk about reordering text in Excel, and I'm going to give you 2 ways to do that. So I've got an overarching idea of what we're going to cover. You're going to cover these 2 specific things. Here we go. Now, since you're less familiar with Excel, yours don't have to fit together like mine do. If you're just teaching 2 different things about Excel, that's fine. Okay, so I'm going to give an overview of what I'm starting with. So it would sound something like this. All right, today we're going to look at this data scenario, and I'm going to show you 2 ways that you can manipulate the text to put it in a different format that you might like. So there's the flash fill technique, where you show Excel the pattern that you want to establish, and then there's a hotkey you hit, and it very quickly figures out what the pattern is and executes it. If you have something more complicated in mind, or if you want to do it as a formula that you can repeat, there's this technique called concatenation, which is an adding up of text. So in this case, I'm adding some components here in these different cells to give me this name. Okay, so I'm going to show you those 2 things. First off, just an overview of the flash fill. What happens is it's used for editing. You're trying to find a pattern in tables, and we're going to have you look at an example here, and you're going to basically, you need to give Excel an example, is what I mean by the second point. And then just make a mental note. The one thing you need to remember is that you're going to use Control E to get Excel to execute that flash fill. Okay, so just here's the static representation of it. What you're going to do is you're going to take a cell and you're going to type in the example. So I type in Brian, and I type in Avery, and what I'm doing is giving Excel a model for what I want it to do with the data in this A column. I want it to take the last thing and make it first, and the first thing and make it last, right? And then when I got that set up, I come down here and I hit Control E, then I come over here and hit Control E, and it's done. All right, so I'm going to switch to Excel now and show you how that works. So I come in here, and I'm going to type, oops, I already typed it. Let me pull this out. Okay, so I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to type Brian. I'm going to type Avery, and I've now given a model. And so if I put the cursor right here and say hit Control E, it'll figure out that I want the first name drawn from over here, the thing after the comma, to be in this cell. And then I'm going to come over here and I hit Control E, and boom, it figures that pattern out. Okay, so again, all I'm doing is typing an example and then coming below it, hitting Control E in each column, and Excel will figure it out. So the next function I'm going to teach here is concatenate, and what you're doing with that is adding up these different cells. So I have it right now showing you that you're going to take text in one cell and text in the next cell and combining that into a full name in a different cell. So the way you do it is you say concatenate, and basically you're saying add up these things. B2 plus a space plus C2. And those 3 things get added up. You can make it a lot longer where you're adding up a lot of different columns, but this is a fairly simple case. Okay, so what does that look like? You're going to have this column, you're going to have that column, you're going to type concatenate here, and then B2 space C2, right? And then when that's done, that'll have Brian Avery show up. Pulling the first one, pulling the second one, etc. Okay, let's go and do the live action demonstration. So here I've got, do it from scratch. I'm going to type equals to tell it it's a formula. Concatenate. Sometimes I misspell that. And then it's going to be B2, comma, a space between two. It's two, the double quotation, space, double quotations, comma, C2. Oops. There we go. And once you have that done, you can just drag fill that to the bottom. So that's it. Okay, so those are my that's my little run through of what's I really want you guys to be able to do. And remember to review these different presentation tips as you're going through it. And I'll just say, like, I've done some fancy arrows that you don't necessarily need to do, some call outs. Call outs and some arrows like this would be helpful. So I'd like to see some of that, but I realize we haven't really gone over how to do all those things in PowerPoint. For most anything with PowerPoint, you can just Google it and you'll very quickly get a good explanation of how to do something. Okay, I think that's it. All right, thanks for listening.